The house shelters daydreaming. The house protects the dreamer. The house allows one to dream in peace. Those are the words of philosopher Gaston Bachelard from Poetics of Space. Like dreaming is a uniquely human vocation, a sacred act that needs a sacred space. Human beings have always created dream spaces, in caves, temples, churches, theaters. Our species understands that liminal realms are necessary, even if society struggles to sustain them. What do you think an ideal dreamer's house would look like?
When you come in, there's all this beautiful wood. There's this great circular staircase that kind of sweeps from the first floor to the second floor. And on a sunny day when the light hits just right, the effect is of being in this very warm, very welcoming space. I first came to this house when I was 14. It was 1977 or 78. And it was a marvel. It was like the beginning of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, where they get sent off to the countryside to live with their uncle, and he's got this crazy big house. And it has that feeling, it's like the entryway to Narnia.
That's Audrey Niffenegger. She's an artist and a writer, but I spoke with her in the fall of 2021 about a new endeavor.
I'm the founder and president of the board of a new organization called Artists Book House.
The Artist Book House will be a nonprofit center for writers, artists, and book lovers to gather. They'll take classes, put on events, share ideas, and most of all, they'll create art. And the house in question is this 22,000 square foot mansion.
If you try to imagine this wonderful big house that overlooks Lake Michigan, it sits next to a lighthouse. It had its own private beach. The effect of the landscaping was to make the house feel kind of secluded behind this screen of trees and plants. And there was water, there was a kind of forest effect that enveloped it.
This historic property in Evanston, Illinois is called the Harley Clarke Mansion, and it will become the home for Audrey's new organization. But there's a problem.
The Harley Clarke is, at the moment, very dirty. So we've been over there with brooms and vacuums and mops, and we're still on the first floor. This is how big this house is. We have been cleaning and cleaning and cleaning. We are still on the first floor. And we have not done all of the first floor. We've never actually come face to face with the raccoons, but we can see their little footprints. And the reason that we, the board of Artist Book House, have rolled up our sleeves and we're getting in there and working with the house ourselves rather than just dialing up a cleaning service. It is a form of revivification. You know, we're trying to bring it back to life.
How does one bring a space back to life after it's been dead for years? Is it just a matter of cleaning the floors and the baseboards and the nooks and crannies of the place? Or does it take something more? Does it take understanding the space's history, the dreams and disappointments and wild ambition that brought it to life in the first place?
The house was built by the architect Richard Powers, and the landscaping was the very famous landscape architect Jens Jensen. The blueprints, oh, they're gorgeous. They look like a starry sky or something. You know, that wonderful cyanotype blue.
The Harley Clarke Mansion is a product of the Gilded Age. The lavish English Tudor-style home was built on its lakeside property in 1927, just a few years before the stock market crash. Its owner and namesake, Harley Clarke, was an electric utilities tycoon. And before he fell to financial ruin, this 16-room mansion was the physical manifestation of his exorbitant wealth.
I had once seen a photo of that grand staircase where there was a mural painted on the wall. This beautiful kind of landscape, kind of trees in the foreground and water in the background. But now it was just a whitewashed wall. So you did get this kind of Brideshead Revisited feeling of a house that had a more gracious past.
In 1951, the house went to a new owner, the Sigma Chi fraternity, which used the Harley Clarke as its national headquarters for 15 years. Then, in 1965, the fraternity sold it to the city of Evanston, which soon leased the space to the Evanston Arts Center.
And of course, by the time I finally saw it in the late 70s, the house had a completely different feeling. You walked in and it was just always buzzing with activity and full of other artists. And, you just really got a feeling that you had entered a community.
This space became a resource for artists like Audrey Niffenegger. It offered classes and equipment across all kinds of disciplines.
When I graduated with my BFA, like every artist who needs large equipment that she can't afford, I looked around and I thought, oh gosh, I guess I'll go back to the Evanston Arts Center and take class again because they have these wonderful studios. And so I was signed up for printmaking once again and photography, et cetera, et cetera.
Soon after, Audrey started teaching her own classes there at the young age of 23. And as much as she fell in love with the art center, she also fell in love with the house. And not just the house as it was, but also the house as it had been. It would be decades before she wrote the international best-selling novel, The Time Traveler's Wife. But in a way, the house was already taking her on a journey through time.
You could move around the house and there was always this doubling. Like if you went down to the metal studio, that was the conservatory, and you could sort of imagine what it might have been like when it was full of plants, but now it was full of people welding. The printmaking department was in what used to be the master bedroom of the house. If you went down to the basement, well, once upon a time that was a billiards room, but now it was ceramics and it was full of people throwing pots. The executive director's office for the art center used to be the maid's sitting room. So you always had kind of this double image of now and then.
For nearly half a century, the Evanston Arts Center was a community gathering space. And throughout much of that time, the house really did seem alive, living in this duality of the past and the present, and in the dreams of all the people who passed through. But it's such a massive property that eventually neither the city nor the Arts Center had the funds to maintain it. So the Harley Clarke mansion closed, abandoned in limbo for years.
There was a while where we all thought it might get torn down, so that was nerve-wracking. I know a lot of people who like to be on the beach, a lot of neighbors who like to walk by, who really felt very worried about it, almost the way you would worry about a person or a beloved animal. I think everybody wondered what was to become of it. The house sat by itself for a while and started to feel lonely and rather haunted, really. And I don't mean that literally in the sense of, the souls of the dead or anything like that. I mean, it was a house that had a lot of people's desires and ideas and hopes swirling around it. And so the house felt not just lonely, but kind of indecisive.
There was so much history in the house, leftover dreams of all its occupants, conflicting, indecisive, as Audrey says. I started to wonder if some deeper indecisiveness may have come from the land itself. Before the Harley Clarke mansion was built here, this was a point where 4 different ecosystems met: the dunes, the marsh, the prairie, and the forest. Almost like the land couldn't decide what it wanted to be. But this confluence of ecosystems created a uniquely charged environment known as an ecotone. In an ecotone, diverse collections of species can merge and truly thrive, which is what happened on a human scale, too. Native tribes used this land as part of a travel route. French-Canadian missionaries colonized the area, and foreign ships interested in trade were attracted to the jutting shoreline, which was treacherous, and caused many shipwrecks with few survivors until the lighthouse was built in 1873. This land, known as Grosse Pointe, carried years of intersection, intention, creation, and destruction. It was the land Harley Clarke Mansion was laid on. Deep beneath the foundation, and maybe deep in the minds of all who walked past the shuttered structure, like Audrey, fretting over its future. Then, in 2017, Audrey had an idea. The center she had co-founded at Columbia College Chicago was closing. It was a book and paper arts center that had offered an MFA in the unique field of book and paper arts.
Book arts include really everything to do with books, everything from making paper, printing, bookbinding, typography, calligraphy, paper sculpture. There's just so many things that you may not immediately associate with the word book that are book arts.
Audrey was heartbroken to see her book and paper arts center go, just like she was heartbroken about the Harley Clarke Mansion.
At that point, I thought, that's what we need to do with that building. We could put a book and paper center in there. That would be really pretty cool. And I could see what to do with each room, and it really the vision just came into focus. I'm a real believer in community education. I like the idea that there's places where you can go where you're not getting a grade, you are there because you want to be there, and it's not hideously expensive.
So Audrey and a devoted team of collaborators came up with a proposal for the city.
So our proposal was, we're going to make this a literary and book arts center. And I think my heart was just going a mile a minute. I thought I was going to have a heart attack. And I turned it in and got a little receipt. Felt very strange afterward.
And she entered into a 40-year lease to turn the storied Harley Clarke Mansion into the artist's bookhouse.
We're going to be there, hopefully, for a very long time. We have a 40-year lease. I will be 97 when that lease expires. I mean, in reality, let's face it, I'm sure I won't be around, but other people will be enjoying the house, I hope.
But it will be a long road before anyone can enjoy it. Renovations are estimated to cost between $8 and $10 million. So Audrey and her team have just a couple of years to raise a mountain of money.
We hope to be open to the public in 2026, which seems like a very long time from now. But then when we consider the money we have to raise, it seems like 10 seconds from now. I mean, you know how it is with time. Time is a very relative thing. We would love to be open tomorrow, but there is so much to do, and it really has to be taken step by step.
Much of her work with the board is to reintroduce the house as a meeting place, to make it a destination where Chicago area locals and artists can mingle with each other, as well as the larger world of literary arts. In essence, to reestablish it as an ecotone.
Part of what we want to do is figure out ways to connect it more with the rest of Evanston. I mean, it does kind of sit there in that corner. And I mean, if nothing else, we're going to have a cafe. So even if people don't want to join a book club, they don't want to take a writing class, maybe they don't care about making paper, I'm hoping that at least they will enjoy sitting out on the terrace in the backyard having a glass of wine or something. A lot of people pointed out, that there's really not that many people who have a house on the lake, and this is the People's Lake House. I think that's important, that people get to come on in and experience that.
To walk through the house in its raw transitional state is like a journey through a dormant hive. You can tell there was once life here. Uncertainty, while still palpable, feels more like a promise. Something new is coming.
We've proposed and committed to taking all the public spaces in the house, which were once the library, the living room, the conservatory, the solarium, the dining room, all of those spaces we're going to try to take back to, as close as we can, what they looked like when the family was there. You know, there's a lot of restoration to do in some of the rooms. For example, Regin Igloria, one of our board members, has been taking a circular saw and a crowbar to this horrible, horrible Formica desk that sat in the foyer since the late 80s. I remember the day they put that desk in, and I was just horrified. And watching Regin destroy this thing just heals my soul, I have to say. And he's been cutting it into bits and taking it away. And Regin's art involves repurposing materials, and so he's actually going to do something with this in the way of art making.
As it turns out, deconstruction is a necessary part of revivification.
You know, that's the fun of it. I mean, that'll be the aha moment when people finally get to come back in there and go, wow, you know, this is what it once was, and wow, isn't that great?
You can support the Artists Bookhouse by donating at artistsbookhouse.org.
It's going to be a wild ride trying to fundraise for this, but boy, it sure will be wonderful. I mean, it's going to be good.
This has been an Extraordinary Project production, created by me, Suzanne Clores, with the Artists Bookhouse and the generous support of the Illinois Arts Council. Many thanks to Alyssa Edis for the story edit, sound design by J.L. Simonson, and for the mixing, mastering, and light scoring by Malika Gumpangam. Until next time.